Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Joseph S. Samaniego, and I'm the author of the Carolingian Age book series, and I am back with another video. This is the 5 greatest knights in medieval history. Obviously, this is a opinion piece, but we talk about in my books. We actually do talk about a lot about knights as well, and their heroes, and you see that in Game of Thrones. You hear about different knights or different warriors, great warriors such as the Hound or the Mountain, the Knight of Flowers. You hear about the Targaryens being these having great knights, the Starks, even Jaime Lannister, and even in my books, you talk about the heroes. The Knight of the Waters. If you've read Heroes of the Carolingian Age, which is a short story. It contains a short story about him, Rowena from Scorned. Then you have, obviously, different characters throughout the books that have these embellishments to them because of their bravery or their heroics in battle, stuff like that. And so let's look into some real-world historical examples.
The medieval era was the age of the knight, the armored aristocrat who fought on horseback. These men were nobles, warriors, lords, judges, and in some cases, poets. They were the ruling class of their age, forming a sort of extended brotherhood that dealt with one another according to the principles of chivalry.
Yeah, so that's a good point to make right there, is that for the most part, knights were noblemen. They would have been ruling over a patch of land or even a large parts of land or even a country, what we would consider to be a country today. And they were rich. To be a knight, you almost had to buy your way in because you had to buy the armor, you had to buy the horse, you had to buy the training. And it was a lot of connections of knowing people and alliances and building up and marrying the right people and marrying your children to the right people. And so, yeah, there was this connection, this network, but it was definitely a rich person's game.
Today, the chivalric code is somewhat mysterious and perhaps even existed in many versions during the Middle Ages. However, it often embodied virtues that even today are associated with the idea of the knight: courage, loyalty, charity, discipline, faith, and honor. Today, we'll highlight 5 remarkable knights who left a lasting impression on their age and ours as well. Number 5, Edward the Black Prince.
Okay. Yep.
Eldest son of Edward III of England, Edward, known to history as the Black Prince, was heir to the English throne. From an early age, he showed remarkable ability as a warrior. At 16, in 1346, he led the vanguard of the English army that defeated the French at the Battle of Crecy. His father appointed him lieutenant in Gascony in 1355.
And that is not such a unusual feat for a 16-year-old to be leading an army. We hear about that. Baldwin IV and the King of Jerusalem did the same thing against Saladin. When he was 16 years old, Edward III's grandfather and the Black Prince's great-grandfather did the same against forces, rebellious forces. Richard the Lionheart, same thing. Henry II, same thing. That was not unheard of. That was about the point where it's like, okay, you're 16 years old, get out there and start leading. And Edward III, in his own right, the Black Prince's father, was what we would consider to be one of the better kings of England, especially of that particular family line, the Plantagenets. It seemed like the Plantagenets went good king, bad king, good king, bad king. But around this point with Edward III, they had some good kings. His father was a decent king, and Edward, the Black Prince, was shaping up to be a good one.
The next year, while ravaging French territory, Edward encountered a French army led by King Jean II near Poitiers. After the two forces failed to come to terms, a battle ensued in which the French were heavily defeated and King Jean himself was taken prisoner. This battle proved a key point in the 100 Years' War. In 1362, Edward married Joan of Kent and was named Prince of Aquitaine and Gascony by his father. In 1367, Edward set out for Spain to help restore King Pedro of Castile to his throne. At the Battle of Nájera, Edward proved his prowess once more, defeating Pedro's rival, Enrique of Trastamara. Returning to his lands in Aquitaine, Edward made himself unpopular with the nobility by levying taxes to pay for his Spanish campaign. The nobles rose in revolt, and Edward responded with brutal force. In 1370, Edward besieged Limoges. When the city fell, the Black Prince subjected it to a brutal sack, and many of the citizens were slain. This merciless conduct in Aquitaine may be the source of Edward's reputation as the Black Prince, though another theory credits the black color of his armor.
Yeah, and that's also a trait of that family of the Plantagenets, was that they did have a lot of rebellions. The barons were very rebellious. We saw that with John II. You see that with Henry II. His own sons rebelled against him. And so it wasn't an uncommon thing for the king or the princes to put down these rebellions.
In 1376, Edward fell sick with an illness likely contracted in Spain. He died at the age of 45 before he ever had the chance to succeed his father to the throne.
And just a couple other points on Edward. He actually helped regain a lot of the land that was lost by John II. Excuse me, not John II. John, actually the only one John. So it was only King John the only. He actually regained a lot of that land that had been lost. And had he not died, and I believe it was from dysentery, had he not died, he actually probably could have regained all of it, or at least larger chunks of it. And England and France may look different today. I just moved the thing so you guys can see the when they're talking about over here.
Number 4, William Marshall.
And of course I covered the name up. William Marshall, yes.
William Marshall was born in 1146 or 47, fourth son of John Marshall, an Anglo-Norman noble, during the reign of King Stephen of England. As a younger son, William could expect no inheritance for himself. Knighted in 1166, he began traveling, competing in tournaments, and earning a name for himself as a truly remarkable warrior. He spent 2 years in the service of Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was impressed by his prowess. In 11...
Yeah, and they actually, some of the Knight's Tale film with Heath Ledger, some of the ideas of this, mysterious knight showing up and starting winning these tournaments was something based on William Marshall. Obviously, he wasn't a mysterious knight. He was a son of a lesser noble, but he was kind of came out of nowhere and just pretty much went undefeated for, I want to say, he never lost a match, and it was upwards of in the hundreds. So a lot of the Heath Ledger aspect of athleticism in the joust is kind of based on William Marshall's character, or William Marshall historically.
In 70, the King of England, Henry II, designated Marshall as tutor-in-arms to his son and heir, Henry the young king. The young king made a vow to go on crusade, but he took ill. As he lay dying, young Henry asked William Marshall to keep the vow for him. Marshall obeyed, traveling to the Holy Land in 1183, where he met with the Knights Templar and made a vow to join their order on his deathbed. Returning from the Holy Land, Marshall continued as a high-ranking member of the royal court, serving Henry II, and then Richard the Lionheart, who arranged for Marshall to marry Isabel de Clare, heiress to the earldom of Pembroke. William was part of the Lionheart's Regency Council during the Third Crusade, and when Richard returned to his kingdom, William served him during his wars with Philip II of France. William continued to serve the royal crown during the difficult reign of King John, and was one of the few English barons to remain loyal during the First Barons' War. As he lay dying, King John made William regent and guardian of his son, Henry III. Marshal defended the crown's interests against the French and rebellious barons, winning a brilliant victory against Prince Louis of France at the Battle of Lincoln in 1217. He finally died in 1219, having served 5 English kings. In his last moments, he took the vows of a Knight Templar.
Yeah, so William Marshall has always been seen as the epitome of knighthood. He is the kind of the knight you want to achieve to be. He was a diplomat. He was athletic. He was very intelligent when it came to not only strategy with battle and tactics, but also just in general. He was a very intelligent person, and he was a very noble person in spirit, from what we know, and loyal, and sometimes loyal to a fault. Some of his loyalties at the beginning, after Richard's death, and to proclaim John the king, which was, based on the line, was the right thing to do, although there was another claim to the throne with Arthur of Brittany. And there were people saying that Arthur would be the better king, the better choice, but William Marshall said, no, John is the rightful heir. And that kind of did lead to a lot of upheaval. Arthur of Brittany being murdered at some point within the next couple years at John's hand. And if you ever want to know more about that particular family and just medieval history in general, especially in when it comes to English history, but the Plantagenets, author Dan Jones, and historian, he's an amazing writer, of historical writer, and so I would suggest reading his works because he does talk a lot about that time period.
Number 3, Balian of Ibelin. Balian.
Okay, we're going to see what he says here because I'm thinking Kingdom of Heaven film, and if he's going, let's see if he's just going based on that. Because I don't really know much about the historical Balian. In fact, I want to say that that they made a fictional character for the Baron of Ibelin, but let's see.
Balian was born in the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem around 1143, youngest son of the nobleman Barison of Ibelin. In 1177, he joined the young king of Jerusalem, Baldwin IV, at the Battle of Montgisard, in which the Crusaders smashed Saladin's army. That same year, Balian married Maria Comnena, widow of the late King Amalric of Jerusalem. In 1187, Balian and his knights accompanied the new King Guy's army against Saladin's forces at Hattin. The ensuing battle was a devastating defeat for the Christians, while most of...
Never take your forces away from water. That's the main reason why they lost.
Guy's army was destroyed. Balian led his knights in a charge that breached part of Saladin's encirclement, allowing them to escape. After the battle, most of the kingdom fell to Saladin. When Saladin besieged Jerusalem, Balian led the citizens in defending the city. Saladin pummeled the walls with his siege engines, but Balian organized the city's defenses brilliantly, and Saladin found that Jerusalem did not fall so easily. This convinced Saladin to negotiate with Balian, and the Sultan finally agreed to allow some of Jerusalem's inhabitants to buy their freedom. Balian negotiated with great commitment for the lives of Jerusalem's poor, many of whom were refugees from the kingdom's fallen towns. During the Third Crusade, in which Richard the Lionheart defeated Saladin repeatedly in battle and won back much of the kingdom's coastal territory, Balian acted as Richard's chief ambassador to Saladin, helping negotiate the Treaty of Ramla that secured a peace between Saladin and the Crusaders. Balian's heroic defense of Jerusalem in 1187 won him acclaim throughout the Christian world, as well as respect among the Muslims, who described him as like a king.
Okay, so just checking it out, it seems like the Kingdom of Heaven character, Balian, portrayed by Orlando Bloom, is very fictionalized and very not fictionalized, if that makes any kind of sense. So yes, the end of the movie kind of did seem to work, except for the fact he didn't go with Richard when he left. He just left it all. But yeah, he did negotiate. Just reading a little bit here and kind of corroborating what he's saying. And yeah, so now we know he was at the Battle of Hattin, which in the film he's not. He takes a stand against that, whereas here he's in the actual history he did go. So yeah, this it was interesting. Reading about him real quick, it's very interesting. He wasn't as honorable as the Orlando Bloom version, but at the same time, he was. It was probably more honorable than most of the knights that went on crusade. Because you got to remember, a lot of the guys that went to crusade were going there to get rid of any sins that they may have committed or may be committing later on. Because the idea of going on crusade wasn't just that, hey, yeah, you're absolved from the sins you've committed. You're also going to be absolved from any future sins. And so, all right, let's go. So it really, he seemed to be a little bit more honorable than a lot of them.
Number 2, El Cid.
I would have been pissed off to no end if they did not include El Cid.
Rodrigo Diaz, before he earned the title of El Cid, from the Arabic word meaning Lord, was born to a knightly family in the Kingdom of Castile in Spain. He served as chief military commander for King Sancho II. The next king, Alfonso VI, arranged for his own relative, the Lady Jimena, to marry Rodrigo. However, in 1081, Rodrigo fell from King Alfonso's favor, and he was exiled. Leading a small band of his own knights, the Cid found employment in Moorish Zaragoza, where...
Okay, so we got to elaborate a little bit there. He didn't just fall out of favor. He accused Alfonso of perpetrating Sancho of Castile's death and murder. And he made him swear on holy relics, which Alfonso did, probably lying, and swore that he had nothing to do with the death. And that accusation haunted Alfonso because El Cid was so respected. So yeah, and the idea of a Christian knight in Spain going and fighting for the Moors, for an Islamic lord, was not uncommon, vice versa. There was, in a lot of the areas, especially in the area like around here, the Madrid, Toledo, all this area here, you would find Islamic mosques next to churches, next to synagogues. It was an uneasy alliance, or not alliance, it was an uneasy peace, but it was peaceful compared to other areas. Was it always 100%, happy and friendly? No, but for the most part, it was relatively peaceful at this point. The Reconquista had not begun yet.
Where he served as military commander for the Emir al-Mutamin, a tributary of the King of Castile.
Yeah, he basically became a mercenary.
In 1086, the Almoravids, an army of powerful North African militants, invaded Spain and defeated King Alfonso VI at the Battle of Sagrajas. Desperate for help, Alfonso formally pardoned El Cid, though their relationship would remain stormy. King Alfonso authorized El Cid to hold by hereditary right any lands he might conquer from the Moors in the east. In 1093, El Cid besieged and blockaded the city of Valencia, which had been in Moorish hands since the early Arab conquest. Valencia surrendered on June 15, 1094, and the Cid entered the city in triumph. The fall of Valencia roused the wrath of the Almoravids, who by now held virtually all of the Moorish territory in Spain. The Almoravid commander, Yusuf ibn Tashfin, dispatched an army And in September of 1094, Almoravid forces clashed with El Cid's much smaller army on the plain of Cuarte. The Cid led his knights in a bold charge, and the huge Almoravid host was shattered. The Battle of Cuarte was the first defeat suffered by the Almoravids since their arrival on the Iberian Peninsula. El Cid defeated them again at the Battle of Bayren in 1097. Rodrigo Diaz, El Cid, would continue to rule in Valencia until at last he died on July 10, 1099. His widow, Jimena, traveled back to Castile, escorted by King Alfonso's army, bearing her husband's body to be buried in the land of his birth. El Cid's striking victories in the Reconquista made him one of the great legends of medieval poetry and song.
So I'm not sure if we want to consider that to be the beginning of the Reconquista. I guess 1099 was pretty close to it. It really kicked off further more when with Isabel in later on in the High Middle Ages. El Cid, really what he was just trying to do was take back some of the land, and reconquer some of it, but it was never theirs to reconquer at that point. It had pretty much been Valencia had pretty much been in the Moorish territories for centuries at that point. The Vandals did hold it at some part, and the Visigoths as well took control of it at some point. There's an Amazon series about El Cid, which actually does more on his youth. And when I say youth, I mean we're talking late teen years, as he's a squire to Sancho, Prince Sancho at the beginning, and you kind of see where he starts to get his fame. It's a really well done series. It's in Spanish on Amazon. Actually, I think they now dubbed it in English, so you can watch it with subtitles, or you can watch the dub version. Great acting, and it's historically fairly accurate for the setting and some of the minor details that you'll see, especially with armor, clothes, with the way of how things were done. They kind of go into a lot more detail with certain things than other shows and other movies you'll see. Just in the day-to-day rituals. So it's really cool to see that. But you also, with El Cid, this is a guy that was bound by honor, bound by duty. We have his swords in Tizona, who just was his main sword. It is in Madrid, I think, or it's in Seville, in a museum. You can visit it. People make recreations of it all the time. It's a beautiful piece and just something to behold. A lot of legend around him. He was very well respected on both sides, and in every army he fought for and every army he fought against. It was, he was a very well respected person. So definitely someone to consider. However, the one cool aspect is he was a mercenary at one point. So here we have this comparison to some of my characters, such as Rowena, who was a mercenary and who built herself up, and that's what he did. He built himself up to become a king, because he actually was king of Valencia. I don't think he ever called himself king, but pretty much in every way he was king of Valencia.
Last one.
Number 1, Godfrey of Bouillon.
Okay, so this is interesting, because this is Godfrey of Bouillon. He's connected to several noble houses in Europe. I want to say he's cousin of King Stephen of England, or some, to some extent. They're part of they have family relations. And this is who Liam Neeson's character in Kingdom of Heaven is based on. Different time period. This is about a century after, or the real person was a century before Liam Neeson's character, before Kingdom of Heaven. But it's based on his same ideals and his same aspects. So let's see if they really talk about
the noble spirit of Godfrey.
Godfrey of Bouillon's legendary status eclipses that of almost any other medieval knight. As a leader of the First Crusade, Godfrey and his knights were the first to storm the walls of Jerusalem, capturing the city in 1099. But who is the man behind the legend? Godfrey was the second son of Eustace II, Count of Boulogne, and an ally of William the Conqueror. Godfrey's mother was Ida, a woman revered as a saint who engaged in many charitable works. In a time when most noble ladies used wet nurses, Ida insisted on breastfeeding her own children so that she could keep them closer to her and instill them with virtue and love of God. Godfrey grew up strongly pious. In 1076, Godfrey inherited the Duchy of Lower Lorraine from his mother's brother, Godfrey the Hunchback. However, the importance of the duchy prompted the Holy Roman Emperor, Heinrich IV, to initially withhold part of Godfrey's inheritance. In these early years, Godfrey proved his abilities as a leader in battling many enemies bent on depriving him of his uncle's lands. Godfrey also proved himself a reliable ally to the Holy Roman Emperor, and by 1087, Godfrey had fully secured the Duchy of Lower Lorraine.
Yeah, I mean, you see in that area right there, obviously that's where Godfrey was kind of known to be from. But Cologne being a pilgrimage site at one point, I don't know if it was at this point yet, I believe so. And this river coming off the Meuse River coming off the Rhine, very important for trade. I mean, you have a very important land. I can almost see why they wanted to keep it from him during his youth. Not really necessarily keep it from him, but just make sure it's managed well.
In 1096, Godfrey responded to the call to crusade from Pope Urban II, selling or mortgaging most of his lands. Godfrey raised a considerable army and set out for the Holy Land in August. By 1099, Godfrey was one of the preeminent leaders of the Crusader host, and with his knights, he stormed the city of Jerusalem. He was then elected as the first leader of the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem, though he refused the title of king, as he believed the only king of Jerusalem was Jesus Christ. Instead, he adopted the title Defender of the Holy Sepulchre. He died in July of 1100, revered as the restorer of Jerusalem and the founder of the Crusader Kingdom.
Hold on, let me see. In creating this, I held myself to a rule. No kings. Okay. Well, that's a good rule. I can think of two off the top of my head. Great. I would have put Henry II above him. All right, so he gives you some sources here, so I would say take a look at that. I'll link the original video. If we're talking First Crusade leaders, Godfrey of Bouillon was probably the best leader. There's another, I think Extra History did a video on the First Crusade recently, or several videos, and they talk about the different leaders. That'd be something to check out. Maybe I'll do something on that. Raymond Toulouse, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it terribly, was probably was also a very competent leader. And you also had Godfrey. I think Godfrey's brother went with him, or his cousin. And then you had a couple other Norman. Bohemond was one of them, because the Normans left Italy and Sicily to go, but it was really the Frankish leaders that kind of were the most successful, and because a lot of it was because they prepared the most and they prepared the best, so they were the most successful. Godfrey being obviously the most successful, because he was elected king. He didn't choose it, he didn't ask for it, and he didn't want it. He went there for the purpose of following through the Crusades command, which was obviously erroneous, because pilgrims were already reaching there. The idea was to protect the pilgrims from the bandits, who were more often than not Christian bandits. So that's kind of it for today. I don't want to take too much more time. So please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. And take care.